Alright, I'm not even gonna pretend that this puzzle has a good explanation. It doesn't. The grue puzzle is a weak attempt to play around with the reality of language and how it evolves over time. It states that an emerald can be green today, but there's nothing to say that it won't be grue after a certain specified time. Since you can't be sure that it'll be green tomorrow, you have to accept that an emerald can also be grue, which is just green and blue smashed together into a made-up word. It's basically a criticism of something called inductive reasoning, which is just the idea of using past observations to determine future outcomes. If I observe that emeralds are green, then I can use inductive reasoning to determine that it'll be green tomorrow. We can't see the future, obviously, so we can also say that we have no idea if an emerald will suddenly turn into a brand new color. The biggest problem with this reasoning is that it completely ignores the stability of certain things. Not only that, but it picked the worst possible example of something to show this flaw in language and reasoning. Color doesn't actually change, ever, because the visible light spectrum is a fixed, unchanging part of our experience. We aren't going to wake up one day and find that all green colors have been replaced with its annoying little cousin grue. If something changes color, then its physical structure or properties have changed to reflect different parts of the light spectrum. Our collective experience of color is not going to change. Language, as I said, evolves over time. The word for the color green varies, but the actual color of green that we see does not. If the actual color we see ever did change, we would use a different word for it, because the word green would no longer be functionally useful. If the color green changed very slowly over many centuries, then perhaps we wouldn't even notice, and it would still be green to us. That's the flaw that grue puzzle tries to highlight. We use language to describe our experience of reality. It's not a representation of what reality actually is. Because the word grue doesn't describe anything real and serves no meaningful purpose, nobody actually uses it. If grue described a color between green and blue, or a brand new color we've never seen, then that would have a use, and it could find its way into common language. Aside from that, there is the supposed flaw in inductive reasoning. The grue puzzle basically says that it's not logical to predict the future based on past observations of reality. You know, the emerald may not always be green, so you can't call it green definitively, which is stupid. Emeralds are green because they are reliably green. No emerald has ever changed colors on its own, so why would it ever change in the future? If it can sit in the ground for 1,000,000 years, or more, and be dug up and put on display for years with no structural change of any kind ever, then it's not going to change. A rock has the most stable existence on Earth, which makes it a horrible example for this puzzle. It's actually like the worst example to use. If the puzzle used something that actually does observably change, like an animal or a plant, then it would have a much better argument to make. Let's say a plant sprouts that looks like an onion, smells like an onion, and by all metrics is probably an onion. We can then use inductive reasoning to say that this plant will grow into an onion. We can't know for 100% sure that it is an onion plant until it grows the onion part, but that's a real example of that type of reasoning. Maybe that plant grows into a weird type of flower that doesn't actually produce onions. So then our reasoning was wrong and can be adjusted for the future. Next time we see a plant that looks like that, we can include that possibility into our thinking. Now we can say it could be an onion or a weird flowering plant. The more times that sprout turns into a weird flower and not an onion, the more sure we can be that it's not actually an onion. The results of reality build upon our understanding of how things will happen in the future. It's a type of probabilistic thinking that all people do to some degree. One more example, just because. If I trip on a piece of sidewalk, my first assumption is going to be that I just misstep, because I do that sometimes. If I trip on that same place the next day, then it stops becoming about me and starts becoming a result of that particular piece of sidewalk. The more times I end up tripping on the piece of sidewalk, the more I hone in on the actual cause of why I keep tripping in that spot. I might think that I always trip there because it's hidden by a shadow, because I consistently don't pay attention in that area. I can then predict that if I'm not careful, I'm likely to trip there again, which prepares me for the future. Regardless of what the actual reason is, I can use inductive reasoning to predict what to expect and when. This flexibility of inductive reasoning is not a flaw, it's by design. It has to be that flexible, because otherwise it's not useful. If we can't adjust our understanding on the fly, then our adaptability falls flat on its face. The grue puzzle is not really a puzzle, it's just a failure to understand language and an attempt to overcomplicate a fundamental pattern of thought. It's a normal thing framed like a problem, which seems to be the core premise of philosophy as a whole. This is why I never took philosophy class.